Welcome to Tell Us Your Story with Dr. Ebony. I am Dr. Ebony. Today's topic is You Gotta Have Faith. My guest today is Pastor Jason Antley, the soon-to-be installed senior pastor of St. Stephen's Lutheran Church in Lexington, South Carolina. Hello, Pastor Jason. How are you? Welcome.
Oh, hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad that you could do this. As most of you know, if you've watched previous episodes, you know that I always give little tidbits on how I know the individuals, if I know them personally. I have to say, in early 2019 is when I first met Pastor Jason after one of the services that my friend had invited me to. And when it came to greet the clergy, Pastor Jason greeted me in such a way, I was like, do I know him? It kind of reminded me of Kings of Comedy when Bernie Mac said it was like a workout meeting Black people at shows, but instead it was a workout meeting this white man after church. So it was funny.
Yeah. I'm a hugger. So yeah.
It was a lot, but I loved it. It was great. It just had me questioning, did I know him from some other time before?
Yeah.
So before I get started, would you prefer I call you Pastor Jason or Jason?
Whatever you want to call. I've had people all the time that ask me what I want to be called, and I tell them that they can call me anything other than stinky or late for dinner, because I'm neither one of those two, but I'll answer to anything else. So no, it's kind of like me if I'm addressing somebody, I always use the Mr., the Mrs., and all that kind of stuff. And they look at me and say, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say that. And I'm saying, my parents would beat me if I didn't do that. So I just sort of let people sort of figure out what they want to say, but it's not a big deal to me.
Okay. All right. So I will stick with Pastor Jason because it's a form of respect. And also growing up in the Black Southern church, you always had to be pastor, reverend, or bishop somebody. You could never just call them by their first name. And the first time I accidentally, and I say accidentally, called Pastor Jason, I had to look just behind me to see if my mom or somebody would come up behind me, like smack me upside the head or something, because it is such a cultural thing that is just embedded in you from childhood. Mm-hmm. That is Pastor so-and-so or Reverend so-and-so. So I will stick with Pastor Jason. So I won't have to talk to anybody about that.
Okay, that sounds good. I don't want to get you in trouble. Yeah.
So Pastor Jason, let's begin. How would you classify yourself as far as gender identity and your ethnicity?
So I am a white male.
Okay. All right. Real simple.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up and what was your family structure?
So I was actually born in Lexington Medical Center. My dad at that point was the pastor out at Mount Hebron Lutheran Church in Batesburg, Leesville. And so I spent my first couple of years out there living in the parsonage with my sister. She's 2 years older, and obviously my mom and dad. And then Dad got a call to St. James Lutheran in Graniteville. We moved there when I was like 2.5, and Dad was there for 34 years. So really, my childhood and all of my growing up years were in Graniteville, South Carolina, little textile mill town. Graniteville Company was the company there. They did most of the time. It was making of denim jeans and dyeing and just that kind of work. And so it was kind of small town USA. We had one stoplight for the longest time. We just in the summers we would go down to the Graniteville Canal, and they'd put a bunch of catfish down there, and we'd go fishing, and there was just all sorts of neat things to do. Kind of walking up and down Laurel Drive where I grew up, and we had probably a dozen of our closest friends that we were just we'd get in all sorts of trouble and have all sorts of fun, and so yeah, growing up in Graniteville was really neat, and growing up a pastor's kid, but Mom was a nurse, so she did some post-surgical nursing care. She also worked in the cardiac cath lab for a long time, and so kind of had that that healthcare background there. Like I said, my sister's 2.5 years older. I have a brother who's 10 years younger. And
Wow.
so yeah, he was sort of the surprise. Cool story about that is my dad was going to a national youth gathering, which is a week-long gathering that we Lutherans do every third summer. And so he was about to get on a bus trip to Dallas, Texas. So it was going to be a bus trip probably somewhere between 16 and 20 hours. And so shortly before they departed to Dallas was when my mom told him that she was pregnant with Joel.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
I was
quite
like,
right.
that is awful. Why would you do that to that man? I had people who commented, they were like, your dad was weird that year, but I didn't know why, but now I know why, so you think you're getting, you think you're sort of done with the bottles and all that kind of stuff and the diapers and they're all going to come back. So, but yeah, it was tight knit family, still are. We'll be getting together for Thanksgiving this coming Thursday, and just we've had our times, but all in all, a lot of love. Really get along and support one another, and so it's a good thing.
Excellent. So I know you mentioned that your father is in the ministry or was in the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that growing up in a family full of teachers, the last thing I wanted to do was to grow up and teach.
Oh, yeah.
But now what am I doing? I'm teaching.
Yep.
So did you always know that you wanted to be a pastor, or were you trying to run away from it as much as possible?
Actually, if you would have asked me growing up, I would have guaranteed you that I was not going to be a pastor, that I was going to do anything other than that. But I think God and my mom have something in common. My mom always told me that the one way that I could always figure out a way to do something is if I told her I wasn't going to do it. So in that respect, sort of maybe God's the same way that, telling God no. And he said, well, all right, I got something for you. So no, it was one of those where I was always involved in the church and, played my tuba in the ensemble and sang in the choir and helped out in terms of lighting the candles and carrying the cross. And I mean, just anything as a pastor's family. I mean, you just all hands on deck, right? You just got to get things done and help out where you can. And so it was just always a part of life. And what really happens when I got to college, it wasn't the same way. And so all of a sudden, you start missing some of that support and that love and the participation part of, being a part of a church, of a congregation, of choirs, of all those different things. And more and more sort of people's voices over the years kind of to become clear to me, which was people saying, you've got talents for ministry, you've got gifts for being a pastor, you've got these things. And so it was, I didn't have any sort of aha moment. I had seminary classmates that talked about hearing voices and all that kind of different stuff, which I don't begrudge at all. Everybody's got their own experience, but mine was sort of that still small voice. It was just over the years, sort of those folks saying, hey, you could be a good pastor, you've got gifts for ministry. And then sort of that maturity in the college years of, that there was something missing, not going to church on Sundays, not being a part of that community. And so by the time I got to my senior year in college, I kind of knew. I called Dad at one point and said, all right, I'm changing my major from engineering to something, and I'm going to seminary. And so what should I change it to? And he told me, he says, well, get a degree in something that you would like to do if seminary doesn't work out. So that's why I became a environment and natural resources major with a minor in forestry. So now I can take you outside and tell you the family, genus, species, and common name of a bunch of trees, that of which does me no good whatsoever. But it was fun. We had a good time. And fortunately enough, seminary worked out and I didn't have to go down another path. So.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So going through the training at the Lutheran seminary and also being a PK, as we call pastors' kids. What valuable lesson did you learn from observing your dad? And have you used any of those lessons in your pastoral journey so far?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's again, a part of it is just being consistent, right? I mean, our call to ministry is just to consistently love people. And it doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean people make it easy. It just means at a certain point you devote yourself to trying to reflect God's love and sort of being that consistent, loving leader in the midst of whatever's going on, whatever in people's life, whatever in the life of the congregation, whatever in the life of our world. You know, how do you try to be that stable, consistent piece to where one of the things they taught us in seminary was a part of who we're supposed to be as pastors is we are supposed to bring sort of a pastoral presence with us. And a part of that is to sort of break through whatever anxieties people have and just to bring a sense of just some calm, some peace. And so, you know, seeing that in my dad and the ministry that he did, you know, he was somebody who brought energy, who brought enthusiasm, who wanted to laugh and to have a good time. Somebody who was just himself, just authentically who Barry Antley is who you were going to get, you know, day in and day out. A family man. So he was at every single baseball and football practice. If he wasn't coaching it, he was sitting on the sideline watching it. And so just his ability to be what he needed to be, to who he was serving at that moment, and then to be able to change roles, and to have those boundaries set up to where he could be the father he needed to be, he could be the pastor he needed to be, he could be the husband he needed to be, you know, all those different things. And again, that gets tricky when, you know, all of a sudden he became a caretaker for his parents.
Oh, yeah.
And so how does that sort of work into things? But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I learned from him is just being creative, being loving, you know, being somebody that people could really depend upon and lean on, you know, no matter what was kind of going on in life. So I've tried as best I can to use a lot of that in the ways that I go about doing things.
Yes. Okay. When did you start at St. Stephen's, and in what capacity?
So I came here in the first Sunday of May back in 2015 as associate pastor. So that was my first few months here was a little strange. I started that first Sunday in May, and 4 weeks later, my twin girls were born, 9 weeks premature, and spent the first 5 weeks in the special care nursery at Lexington Hospital. And so it was like I showed up for 4 weeks, barely knew what was going on, and then I pieced out. And, you know, it was one of those where like I would sort of pop in when I could, but they understood that I was doing what I needed to do. And again, we kind of all understood that at a certain point we would be past that point where we get the girls home and things become more consistent. But yeah, it was kind of a crazy first 6 months for everybody, as we transitioned into figuring out what to do with two little humans, you know?
Yeah. Wow. That I can't even imagine. I mean, I just had one at a time. I can't imagine having two and then being the premature. I mean, it's just a whole lot of stuff that comes with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a pile.
Getting a new job.
Yeah. Figuring out, I mean, and it was to go from a 2-point parish, right? So I was the pastor at 2 churches simultaneously, did one service at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, did the other at 11, sort of drove my truck in my robe and the whole, I'm sure there's some people who will probably say that they, you know, every Sunday they'd see this angel drive or ghost or something driving down the road, like a bat out of you know what, trying to get from one place to another back there in between Chapin and Peak. But So to go from, worshiping 40 at one service, 65 at another, to coming to this place where, we were worshiping anywhere from 325 to 350 between the two services, and just, again, trying to figure out what ministry looks like there and how I fit in, and how do you sort of get stuff started that they've asked you to sort of head up and be a part of. And yeah, it was interesting. But the biggest thing for me is folks understood.
Mm-hmm.
They really were. They were accommodating. They gave me space and time to sort of be dad and be supportive husband, in those times. Pastor Pat, I mean, I just can't say enough about him, in terms of, he pretty much looked at me and said, "Hey man, I've been doing this for 6 months by myself. I can do it for a few more months. You just go do what you need to do, be with your girls." And he continued to do that, through my first 6 years, just consistently allow me to go do what I needed to do in terms of being daddy and helping out with family. And Shannon, Tanya, I mean, the whole staff really, it's just very loving and supportive, both staff and congregationally, to where people have given me the opportunity to learn and grow, while at the same time trying to live out some healthy boundaries of how do I be there for my children and do some of the same things that, my dad was able to do.
Right. Wow. So during your tenure here at St. Stephen's, what has been some of the most impactful parts of your job, personally and professionally? I mean, you've already mentioned the support that you've gotten, from when you first started. So beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to relationships, right? So, I mean, the ability to build relationships, to trust and love people, and to be there for them, in those good times, bad times, and everywhere in between. I think a cool part is just, being able to grow something. So when I got here, we didn't really have much of a young adult kind of group, and so was able to kind of start this group called the Living Faith Group, which we've got. I mean, you're a part of, and a number of others that have really kind of jumped in and joined and become a part of it, and really taken a leadership role in it. So it's, I still kind of advertise some of the stuff, but a lot of it comes from other people wanting to step up and do things. But again, so having the room to kind of grow, cultivate, do something new and different, and folks giving you the room to get it right, to get it wrong. Hey, how can we support you? So I think, kind of doing that. Saints and Sinners Sunday School class was another one that we kind of started, and but then again, at that point, just to be able to pitch in, be a part of a team. Staff was totally different to me than, before staff was two volunteer organists and a volunteer at one of the churches. She called herself, what was it? It was my personal friend, secretary. I mean, she was unpaid, what I mean, it was all these names that she had given herself, but it really was, Miss Linda Amick. She was my right hand lady, and was just so instrumental in me learning things, but also, being able to do the things that we did back at Peak Spring Hill Parish. But so staffing, when I got here, having all of these people, it was a totally different ballgame too, because not just staff dynamics, but how do you divide and conquer? How do you give people space? How do you not micromanage? How do you give them space to be creative and innovative while still keeping things in terms of, focusing on certain themes, focusing on building a certain culture. And so it really is a kind of a balancing act. And so, learning all those things, and and then just again, the worship part is always hugely impactful for me, which again, with the pandemic and COVID and all that stuff, that was, I'd have to guess that's probably the greatest learning experience I've had is what does church become when you can't gather as church?
Right.
And how do you try to get together and be supportive and be a loving community when most of the time that has been based majority on getting together on Sunday mornings. And all of a sudden you're having an Easter service where there's not a single person in the building. Right. And it really kind of, it tore things down to the studs and really allowed us. I have to be honest, there was a lot of heartache and consternation and what do we do? Because you're really reinventing the wheel on nearly everything you've ever done. The cool part of that, though, is like you're having to really think through critically everything you do. And so you keep the good stuff. You can do away with the bad stuff, which actually the church is really bad at throwing stuff away, even stuff that's broken. I mean, just trying to clean out like the literal things that are here on campus, the closet full of books that have been here since 1970 that nobody's read in 40 years, but we can't get rid of it because so-and-so donated it. Right. So getting rid of some of that stuff, but also getting rid of some of, programs, habits, some of the things that you do that you sort of figure out, well, we're just doing it because we've always done it. We're not doing it because it's really effective and helpful. And so we've really been able to become, I think, more effective and more efficient through this process. But it's taken a bunch of time and effort, all hands on deck. So it has definitely been a learning experience, that of which I'd rather not go through again. So,
well, if you have to, you've already been through it once, so it would make it a little easier. It wouldn't be unknown anymore, Yeah,
let's do it about 30 years when I retire. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
So, being a leader, and of course, looking towards your installation, what types of assumptions do you believe people have about you as a person and also as a pastor?
Well, I think the biggest assumption, maybe outside of our particular church, is senior pastor of a downtown church, a larger church. I don't know. Sometimes I think there's unreal expectations that people have about, what the church is and what pastors are supposed to be. At a certain point, we're still just a big group of people. And just because those people come through, the red doors that we have here at St. Stephen's doesn't mean that we fundamentally changed the way that we are, which is we're broken. And so, we bring baggage and there's, again, I think people expect the church to be something different than the world. And I think that should be our aspiration, right? I mean, God's love should make an effect on us, that of which changes the way that we are and helps us to be more reflecting of his love and to live that out. But the expectation that we would do that without fail, I think it's just a pipe dream. I mean, there's no way that we can do that, right? So the expectation is that, can we just be a community who, yes, tries to be different and tries to love and tries to do all those things, but also can we be a community that understands the world that we live in, and can we be forgiving and merciful, and abounding in steadfast love to those people that we may like or we may not like so much. I mean, it's just really interesting to see the thoughts of what people think the church should be, when I think sometimes that's really unfair, because we're just a bunch of sinful people who gather. I've heard it been said like this: you don't go to the gym expecting not to see fat people. Right? I mean, you should not come to the church expecting not to see sinful people. Right. Like we all come with whatever we've got. And again, this is a place that we come to grow and learn, no matter where we are, no matter who we are, difficulties. I mean, all the things we bring with us. This should be a place that all of us can gather, free from judgment, and full of love and grace and all those things. So I think that's a difficult assumption people have. And I guess that also is reflective of the way people assume pastors should be. I'm not your traditional pastor. We'll talk about a question in just a minute. I know you've got for me that will address a part of that, but another part, I mean, it's just, I'm going to dress in blue jeans with a collared shirt, and I don't expect you to put on druthers for me. And I want to meet you where you are. I want to know really what's going on with your family. I want to know the ins and outs of how you're really doing. I don't want you to put on a show for me because I'm pastor and you're supposed to, act a certain way, be a certain way, or talk a certain way to a pastor. Like, just give me what you got. Let's be real, because at that point we can be a lot more efficient with our time. We can get down to business and really help each other a lot better if we can just be who we are. And the difficulty of that is, there are some people who like a pastor for them to just be a regular everyday person. But there are some people who they're just not used to that. And then the more traditional role is that I'm going to sort of look down my nose at people, and they should give much pomp and circumstance, and again, call me certain things or act certain ways. And I just, I don't have the time nor the energy for the show. I just want to get down to knowing people, loving people. So yeah, I know that we as pastors have not done ourselves a lot of good sometimes in the ways that we act, the ways that we judge, the love that we should give or don't give. Or, I mean, again, we're broken people too. So, but yeah, I just want people to be real, and if I can be real with them too, then I feel like we can take our relationship deeper into, we can get to better conversations. We can be more helpful and more healthy, and grow in love, into a more meaningful place, so that, at a certain point, we can break down some barriers and really, really talk and share and grow. And so, yeah, that's kind of my thing.
Well, you kind of touched on a question that I'd already given you about how a pastor should act. And I had heard from some congregants that they have some concerns because every now and then Pastor Jason will cuss every now and then. He'll say a dirty word every now and again. So what would you say to those people? Would you say the same exact thing, that we're just all sinners? What is your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, kind of going back to one of your earlier questions. So I think maybe a part of my going against the grain and really bucking this idea of being a pastor's, being a pastor, becoming a pastor, was that is that I sort of enjoyed, in certain ways, living into the assumption about a pastor's kid, which is that they're kind of a hellion. And so I really embraced that. I really kind of enjoyed that. I mean, I was a nice guy and tried to treat people nice, but I had my times, and I enjoyed having fun with friends in different ways. And but one of the things that I really, really enjoyed was some of the language that went with being a teenager and a college student. And I have to say that I probably embraced it too well, because it's really hard to dial it back. And to tell you the truth, I was more inclined to dial it back when my girls were born than I was to dial it back when I became a pastor, which I don't know what that says either. But I know at a certain point don't want to be a stumbling block to people. So I don't want them to see me and the way I talk and the way I act, and for that to all of a sudden make them, question their faith or question the ministry that we're doing here. So I understand that there's got to be a responsible way for communicating in healthy ways, communicating in ways that people can kind of get behind, but I still really do appreciate a very strategically positioned curse word, because it can make or break the joke. It can really get across some emphasis that others can't. So I wish that I could say that it would totally never come up again, but just yeah. Well, the aspiration is there, I guess. I don't know if I could carry it out, but I do get what people are saying, and I do respect that, and I at least try.
Yes.
We'll put it that way. Yeah.
And again, being human, I think that it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You're a person, no matter what. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And we as people, we cuss. We have our moments.
It happens, man. It happens.
And no matter if it's truly cussing or if it's just, it's something a little out of the ordinary to say, that might offend some people, especially here in the South. There are some phrases that you just don't say. It's not saying it's no vulgar language whatsoever, but the phrasing is like, oh no, don't say that. So, it just kind of all depends on personal preference also. So, So I know for a lot of people, including myself, I'm still trying to figure out this whole pastor, minister, what's going on with these titles? Is this a personal preference, or is this somebody has a little more schooling than somebody else? What is that? What is the difference?
Yeah, actually, I mean, most of that is sort of denominational polity. So what certain denominations call their leaders. So, but in the Lutheran Church in particular, the LCA, we refer to pastors just as pastors, but we have different classifications of what we call rostered leaders. So these are people who have gone through and gotten seminary training, but also who have been vetted and approved by a group of people within the Synod or the governing body of the Lutheran Church in South Carolina. And so we have two different tracks that those vetted, trained leaders go down. One is minister of word and sacrament, which is AKA a pastor. And then we have ministers of word and service, AKA a deacon. And so those are the two primary tracks upon which you are educated and approved by this vetting body to then be able to enter rostered ministry and be called by a church in the South Carolina Synod or the ELCA as a whole to start your ministry. So yeah, we use them sort of interchangeably. Okay. But yeah, some of it just depends on denominational polity and just their way of communicating that, and the words that they've chosen, the vocabulary they've chosen to use as their leadership. And so.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because that was a little confused, because in the bulletin the other week for Welcome Sunday, your seminary classmate spoke, and beside her name it said minister. And I'm like, okay, if they were seminary classmates, how does she get to be a minister and everybody else is a pastor? So how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and I think that was, I have to go back and look. I think the minister of word and sacrament was the phrase there, but I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, I mean, at a certain point people use those interchangeably, but most of the time in the Lutheran Church, that's where you see the word minister used is denoting which track the educated rostered leader is going down.
Okay. All right. So what advice would you give to people that do not believe in a higher power, yet they want to live a good life?
Yeah. And I mean, at a certain point, obviously I have a certain belief of this higher power that we speak of, and that being, God, and his son, Jesus Christ, come to live, preach, teach, die, and be risen. And then the Holy Spirit, being given to the church on Pentecost Sunday in the book of Acts. And so, but I've also, everybody's got to do their own sort of soul searching and trying to understand this complicated world that we live in. I mean, at a certain point, I don't agree with, but I totally understand people who can't get behind the story. I mean, obviously, when Jesus's disciples came out the very first time and they said, "Hey, y'all, guess what? We got this guy Jesus." "Oh, you mean the one that was killed on the cross?" "Yeah, that one. Guess what? I know you saw him die, and I know that we buried him, and you never saw where we buried him. But guess what? We put him in this one burial place, and guess what? On Sunday morning, he was gone, and then he showed us like that he was risen." And the people go, "Well, why didn't we see him?" "Well, he didn't show himself to you, like he showed himself to the disciples and all these other people. But like, it's real. I'm for real. Like, this really happened, and so I know, like." I guess you won't be able to see any bones. You won't be able to see anything, like, but you'll just have to take our word for it. And yeah, now you can't see him because he ascended into heaven. And, just how convenient is that all of a sudden this dude just magically disappears.
Right.
And but me and my buddies saw him, like, take our word for it.
Really?
I get the skepticism. Again, I really enjoyed kind of reading the book, The Case for Christ. I thought it was a rather profound documenting of somebody who came in as a non-believer, who decided that he was actually going to aspire to disprove Christianity. And so he goes through what he calls the case for proving against Christ, and it ends up being the case for Christ. That actually what he finds is a transformative sort of path for him, to where all of a sudden he becomes a believer based upon all the things that he found in trying to disprove Christianity. Again, read the book, have at it. It was really good. But again, I've never been one for trying to like talk people into stuff. At a certain point, I think, folks have to kind of be open and willing to have some of those conversations and sort of come to the table to be able to have real honest and helpful conversations about faith. Right. Here's the deal. If you believe or you don't believe, I think God still loves you. I think God still came and gave his son to die and to be raised for you. Whether or not you believe or you understand, I don't think dictates God's ability to love you or to be able to act on that love on your behalf for the sake of making sure that you get to live with him forever. So, so whether or not you understand it, believe it, accept it, I mean, that's totally on you. It doesn't dictate to God what God's ability to do is. And I think that's the cool part. And then on top of that, I think the last part of your question was, what if they're doing good stuff? Well, fantastic. Again, it's no secret. You don't have to be a Christian to be a decent person and to love people and to be able to forgive and to live with grace and extend a helping hand to those folks around you in need. I think some of the times people have really gotten pushed away by the church because sometimes we have a really bad way of living that love and showing that love and that grace and maybe not reaching out when we should. And people see that and go, well, that's what God's people are like, I'd just rather not. And so, but again, what I hope people see, in myself and in the folks of St. Stephen's and in all Christians, I mean, is that God is present and makes a difference, and that they can see that difference in the way that we treat others, the way that we love others, the way that we live our lives. And then at that point, it affects them to want to come to be a part, to find out, but most of all, I just, whether or not, you are a person of faith or not, living that love and living unselfishly for the sake of the people in the world around you. I mean, think about that. I mean, think about what we're talking about in terms of social justice, and I mean, what if we just all loved? Right. What if that was our primary way of living, is just to love people, serve people, treat others like we want to be treated, help the people around us who need help. I mean, so again, would I like you to be a Christian? Would I like you to be a person of faith? Absolutely. Would I like you to be somebody who's loving and grace-filled and who reaches out and helps others around you? I mean, even more so. So,
right. So what advice would you give seminarians that are looking to get into the ranks of being a pastor?
Yeah, man. At a certain point, understanding that I have a list that me and some of my friends have kind of running, which is all the things that we weren't taught in seminary. and it's a long list. It is a long list, but so I guess the understanding that every single day is different. There is not a day that I walk into the office and I think it's going to go a certain way and something doesn't turn tail and run a different direction, and I get surprised by something, or I get a phone call and need to change my day, go here, there, and yonder. There are some days that are frustratingly inefficient, that I feel like I get home and I've been run over by a bus, but I don't feel like I've accomplished hardly anything. Mm-hmm. So it's really if you're looking to control your week and your schedule and your day, this ain't the work for you. If at a certain point, it's also just, you got to be willing to put in the time, the energy, make the sacrifices. There are very few weekends, if at all, that, I don't at least have text messages or phone calls, much less a funeral or visits, or, something that I didn't have time to do during the week that I've got to have prepared by Sunday. So I'm doing it on a Friday night, or reading my book for Sunday school, or, so you really kind of have to be able to compartmentalize and be where you need to be when you need to be there. But, to just, you try boundaries as best you can, but at a certain point, you kind of have to have a get her done attitude, where it just all hands on deck, whatever it takes. And then, just being willing to invest yourself, make yourself vulnerable, be there for people, be your true, authentic self. And again, a part of our world that's so frustrating is, I feel like people say, well, I'll love those people and I'll serve those people that voted like I did, or that look like I do, or that we think the same. And if you're a pastor, you got to check that at the door, man. At a certain point, the love that I share and the leadership that I give, it has nothing to do with Trump or Biden. It has nothing to do with black or white. It has, literally, you take an oath and make a pledge that you are just going to love people, crazy people that you can't predict, people that, stuff's going to come from every different direction, but you make an oath and you make a pledge that you're going to love them and you're going to lead them and guide them. and it's going to be exceedingly frustrating. There are also going to be days where, I mean, you just can't wipe the smile off of your face. You know, Christmas Eve for me is always a train wreck. We got services, 5 times throughout the day. You know, you're there here at 8 o'clock in the morning. You don't leave until the better part of 1 to 1:30, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. It is one of the most exhausting, long, crazy days. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's never a time where I get home on a Christmas Eve that I can go straight to bed. I'm so jacked up. It's so much fun seeing people and being able to preach the gospel. And man, it's just so crazy. All the different ebbs and flows and ups and downs of being in the ministry. But I feel like, I've been called to a number of things, and that I can feel that and know that. The ministry is one of them. Being a father is another one, and then just, being a part of my family. And I mean, it's just to feel like you're in the right place. You're serving the people God's called you to serve. You're doing what God wants you to do. Yeah, man, it makes life very fulfilling, makes the work that you do very worthwhile. And so, yeah, it is a journey. We'll put it that way. It is a journey, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
Good, very good. So now we're going to move on to the most humanizing questions, I think. And of course, this is about music.
Yeah.
Which I know this is up your alley. So, what is your favorite song that represents you?
Favorite song that represents me. So I you gave me these ahead of time, and I did not dictate which one was going to be, but probably Pharrell's Happy. Okay. I've been told by people that I'm like nauseatingly happy, that like just energy and always got a smile. And like somebody looked at me the other way, they're like, at a certain point, you've got to stop smiling. Like at a certain point, you can't be this happy all the time. But I have no idea. It's a natural high, I promise. I mean, there's nothing helping it. And I understand that it can be aggravating to some, but it's just what I got, man. It's just who I am.
I think as a former Disney employee, I think you might be a step down from Disney crack, is what I called it.
Okay. Disney crack. That's awesome. I'll have to learn how to do the Disney dip. I was taught about that. The Disney dip, where you have to get down and pick up the trash as you're walking down the walkway, but don't let nobody see you, kind of deal.
That and the points.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So what song do you best believe represents Lutherans?
The one that came to mind was Mighty Fortress. So that is, it's actually in our Evangelical Lutheran Worship Hymnal. It's ELW number 504, and it was music and lyrics written by Martin Luther, who obviously is the person who started the Protestant Reformation, and who in the end gave us, was the namesake of the Lutheran Church, was Martin Luther. And so, yeah, to me, for Lutherans, that's our battle hymn. That's our, it is incredibly powerful musically. The lyrics really preach the gospel of Jesus's death and resurrection, and what that means for our life, the mighty fortress that God in Christ is for us, because no matter what the world wants to do to us, that then God in Christ have secured for us, love and salvation. And so yeah, actually my installation service, that will be the hymn that will be sung during communion. So that'll be the communion hymn that everybody will sing as we're receiving the body and blood of Christ. So very meaningful that's on Reformation Sunday, which is the last Sunday in the month of October. That last Sunday, we always have Reformation Sunday. And so that's always the prominent hymn that we do on that Sunday. And so, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Pastor Jason Antley, for
Yeah,
your
thank
time
you.
and telling us your story. So
Yeah.
to all of you watching, thank you for watching. Take care, and may there be peace, love, understanding, and social justice for all.